Good morning, listeners. Myself, Anurpa Chetia Sinha, Assistant Professor of Law at MS Ramaya College, welcome you to the course of Banking Law, which is the second optional paper for the 4th years. In this video lecture, we will be discussing about the first unit of this course, which is the nature and development of the banking law. So first, let's understand briefly about the development of the British banking system, from where the basic concepts of the banking system has emerged. Now, under the British banking system, during that time, there are like two major players who has been responsible for the development of the British banking system. The first one is the Royal Exchanger, and the second is the Goldsmith. Now, what does this Royal Exchanger do? So, during that time, the Royal Exchanger, he used to change the money which was being given to him by the travelers who are traveling from outside the country. And what he does, he then again exchange this money with the one who are going out of the country. So this way he is trying to do the exchange of the currencies which he gets. So at the initial period, he was just doing this money changing only for the benefit of the crown. But later on, he has also tried to deliver this currency exchange to the normal public, basically to the merchants and the traders who wants the currencies for trading and want to move out of the country for the business purpose. So this way the concept of the money exchange has been developed through the Royal Exchanger. Now next is the major player is the goldsmiths. Now, due to the influx of the gold from the America in the Elizabethan age and the simultaneous growth of the foreign trade, land ceased to be the only form of wealth, and the country, the people, and also the merchants, they began to hold the part of their capital in cash. So, as a result, the merchants began to try to keep this whole amount of cash with their cashiers for the safe custody or for the security. But later on, the merchants they have found that these cashiers they are misappropriating their master's money for their own benefit. So now the merchants they have decided to deposit their cash with the goldsmith who in those days had been keeping the strong grooms or they are employing the watchmen for the security of the golds which the goldsmiths having. So the merchants thought that the goldsmith will be the correct person to keep their money with it, who will keep it very securely. So what happens is that once these merchants they have tried to give the cash to this particular person, that is the goldsmith, then they issued a receipt which is known as the goldsmith notes, which embody an undertaking to return the money to the depositor, that is to the merchant, or to the bearer on demand. That is, whenever the merchants will demand from the goldsmith can or have to return that particular cash to the person or to the merchant. Now, this concept of depositing the cash with the goldsmith and again taking it back on demand by the merchants from the goldsmith, this led to the foundation or the development of the concept of issue and deposits of the banking respectively, which we do in our present days. That is, we go to the bank and we deposit our money, and whenever we require, then the banks need to return our money. So from this we can find that the concept of this depositing money and issuing of the or the withdrawal of the cash from the bankers, what the concept has been developed from this person or from this player, that is the goldsmith. Now let's understand about the evolution of the banking institutions in India. So there is plenty of evidence to show that even prior to the advent of the Western ideas, India was not a stranger to the conception of banking. As Manu has stated that a sensible man should deposit his money with a person of good family, of good conduct, well acquainted with the law, veracious, having many relatives, wealthy and honorable. So according to Manu, the money or the our money will be safe and secure with a person who is wealthy and who is honorable, because it believes that that person will keep our money safe and secure. Now, banking in those days or at that period of time must have meant only the money lending, financing the kings for their wars. Even the concept of hundi was found in the period of the Mahabharata, which means the inland bills of exchange. So from this we can derive that the basic concepts of the banking system is not strange, or it is not absent from the Indian society. Even it is present from the much ancient period of the Indian society. Now, if we want to discuss the whole Indian banking system, then it is divided into the two banking systems. The first is an indigenous banking system, and the second is the modern banking system. So, under the indigenous banking system, it was carried out by the businessman called Sharaf, Seth, Sahukars, Mahajans, Shettis, etc., who are basically the money lenders. So they perform the usual functions of lending monies to traders and craftsmen, and sometimes they place the funds at the disposal of the kings for the financing wars. Now, so this indigenous bankers could not, however, develop to a considerable extent the system of obtaining deposits from the public, because the mainly the other people, that is the poor farmers or the other class of the society at that time, they doesn't trust these persons, these money lenders. The next is the modern banking, which originated in the last decades of the 18th century. Now, the first bank is the Bank of Hindustan, which started in 1770 by Alexander and Company, which at Kolkata. Now, however, this bank has failed to work and ceased operations in 1832. But during that period, that is during the pre-independence period, over 600 banks had been registered in the country, but only a few managed to survive. Even during the British rule in India, the East India Company had established three banks, that is the Bank of Bengal, Bank of Madras, and Bank of Bombay. These three banks are called as the presidential banks, and later they were merged into one single bank in 1921, which was called as the Imperial Bank of India, which was again later named as the State Bank of India. Now let's understand the post-independence period, which started with the 1947 to 1991. So when India got independence, all the major banks of the country were led privately, and the people belonging to rural areas were still dependent on the money lenders for the financial assistance. Now, in order to solve this problem, the then government decided to nationalize the banks. So these banks were nationalized under the Banking Regulation Act 1949. Following it was the formation of the State Bank of India in 1955, and there are the other 14 banks which were nationalized between the time duration of 1969 to 1991. These were the banks whose national deposits were more than 50 crores. So these are the names of those 14 nationalized banks during the period of 1969. Now the next period, that is the liberalization period, which started from the 1991 till date. So once the banks were established in the country, regular monitoring and regulations need to be followed to continue the profits provided by the banking sector. So to provide stability and profitability to the nationalized public sector banks, the government has decided to set up a committee under the leadership of Sri M. Narasimham to manage the various reforms in the Indian banking industry. So the biggest development was the introduction of the private sector banks in India, and even the RBI has given license to almost 10 private sector banks to establish themselves in the country. So apart from this major development, there are the other measures which were taken up, that is the setting up of branches of the various foreign banks in India. Even the committee announced that the RBI and the government would treat both public and the private sector banks equally. Any foreign bank could start the joint ventures with the Indian banks, and the payment of the banks were introduced with the development in the field of banking and technology, and the small finance banks were allowed to set their branches across India, and the major part of the Indian banking system, they moved from the physical or from the documentary modes to the online with the internet banking. And now we know that there are the banking apps which are available for the fund transfer or the other kinds of transactions under the banking system. So this way there are the major the policies which has been taken up to develop the banking system within the Indian society or in the Indian economy. So with this we came to end of our first unit, first part, that is the nature and development of the banking system. In the next video we will be starting with the second part of the first unit, that is the constituents of Indian banking system. Thank you.